and welcome to another podcast episode of Belongs to the Shadows. I'm your creepy host, Jaime Bennett, and as always, viewer listener discretion is strongly advised. Last time I talked about Stranger Things. I didn't give a review of it. I came at it from a different angle, so I hope you all enjoyed that podcast episode. If you haven't checked it out, please do so. I am starting to upload these on my TikTok channel as well. I will put the link to my TikTok channel down below if you want to check it out. That would be great. Also, I'm going to give credit where credit is due, as always. A lot of times I get my research from the good old internet, and so we are going to give credit where credit is due. I'm not about not giving credit. Anyhow, I thought that I would talk about the real life inspiration behind one of our favorite, my favorite slasher film characters, and that's Ghostface from Scream, and how Kevin Williamson was inspired by true events that actually took place. So I will be talking about that today. If you cannot handle hearing about slasher films and serial killers and all that type of stuff, then please watch something else or listen to something else, since this is a podcast. Anyhow, if you want to catch some of my old shows, I do have actual shows of Belongs to the Shadows. So you can catch some of my old episodes on Star Raven Studios YouTube channel, or you can also catch it on Cosmos Creative Television YouTube channel as well. If you want to check out some of the show episodes. Anyhow, without further ado, here we go. Like I said, viewer listener discretion is strongly advised. There is going to probably more than likely be some sensitive subject matter in this. This is a haunted history show, and I do talk about gore and violence on the show sometimes. So it is not appropriate for younger audiences. So Scream's iconic Ghostface was actually inspired by a real life person. In case you all didn't know, if my internet ever kicks in, I can further explain it. Anyhow, this comes from www.cvr.com/Ghostface Scream Real Life Villain Danny Rolling. So yes, it was inspired. Ghostface and Scream was inspired by a real life villain, and the person who published this article published it on November 15th, 2024, and their name is Claire Donner. So hopefully I pronounced that right, because I'm going to say it again. I am infamous for mispronouncing things, but hey, it probably gives you all a laugh. Anyhow, so this article, there is a warning on this article, and I will put the link down below so that you all can read this article for yourselves if you choose to do so. But the warning label for this article is it discusses mental illness in relation to violent crime, including sexual assault. So like I said, viewer listener discretion is strongly advised. So in a sunny American town in the 1990s, attractive young co-eds were terrorized by a killer who makes bizarre displays of their remains. That's creepy. They would seek safety in numbers, avoiding the deadly phrase, "I'll be right back." But they can't escape the assailant despite the omnipresent police and news vans. When he is finally caught, he blames a horror movie for his criminal acts. This story may sound familiar to horror fans, but it is not the plot of Scream. It's the true story of someone by the name of Danny Rolling, who was a serial killer and the inspiration for the classic slasher movie. So as far as horror films go and slasher films go, Scream is one of my favorites because it's nostalgic to me. I don't really go for slasher films anymore, but Scream is one of the ones that I will watch. I do like Scream, and I do like Nightmare on Elm Street, like any of those, like classic horror films. Scream is one of the slasher films that I do actually like. And it probably does have a lot to do with the fact that Matthew Lillard was in it. Matthew Lillard is one of my favorite people. The whole cast, actually, I really like the whole cast. So yeah, it's nostalgic for me. I'm probably aging myself, but I've told you all my age before on here, so no big deal. So Scream is mainly a movie about movies in which the ultimate toxic fans commit killings based on traditional tropes. However, screenwriter Kevin Williamson didn't originally set out to pen a postmodern critique of the languishing horror genre. He was first inspired by a news program that scared him out of his mind. The franchise that became famous for Williamson's clever cultural commentary started out as a response to the real-life crimes of the Gainesville Ripper. I have talked about Jack the Ripper on my show Belongs to the Shadows, but I would like to dive deeper into the Jack the Ripper story at some point. Excuse me, I'm sorry. I'm still getting over the flu. I know it happened a couple of weeks ago, but they said that the cough hangs on for a while, so I apologize if I have to clear my throat. That happened last time as well. I do have water on standby, but you know. So for the director Wes Craven, the 1996 surprise hit Scream seems like a natural next step from his 1994 meta movie New Nightmare. That film commented on horror culture by depicting Freddy Krueger as a demonic force made real by extreme fandom. While Kevin Williamson's slasher script took a more down-to-earth approach with its focus on horror-obsessed stalkers, it is strange to think that something as self-reflective as Scream is based on a true life story. But it contains many elements of the case of Danny Rolling. In August of 1990, the so-called Gainesville Ripper killed 5 Florida college students in 4 days, sexually assaulting them and leaving their bodies in provocative poses. When he was finally caught, he attempted an insanity defense by claiming that the terrifying film The Exorcist III had convinced him that he was possessed by the demonic Gemini killer. He also described a supposedly pre-existing split personality called Yenad. Hopefully I pronounced that right. I've never heard of that. I'll have to look that up. Though the idea of demons speaking backwards was also taken from The Exorcist III. So here's a little side note that the author of this article had put in. Jeffrey Dahmer was also obsessed with the Gemini killer. The series Dahmer Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story, dramatizes an incident in which he forced an intended victim to watch The Exorcist III with him. So that's an interesting side note that the author did include on here, if you're interested. Rowling was obviously hoping to invoke the satanic panic style paranoia that made a scapegoat out of horror cinema in the 1980s. It didn't work, but this detail must have stuck in the mind of Kevin Williamson, who saw a 1994 ABC special on the killer while he was house sitting, as he told CNN. So, this comes from Kevin Williamson, and it's a quote that they have on here. "I was getting so spooked, I went into the living room and a window was open. I'd been in this house for 2 days. I never noticed the window open. So I went to the kitchen, got a butcher knife, got a mobile foam. I called a buddy of mine. I went to bed that night so spooked I was having nightmares. And I woke up at like 3 or 4 in the morning and I started writing the opening scene to Scream." And of course, if any of you have watched the movie Scream, not sponsored by Scream, by the way, Drew Barrymore is on the phone and she's saying, "I like scary movies." So if you have not watched Scream, please watch Scream and continue to do yourself a favor and make sure you check out the newer Scream films with Jenna Ortega, who, by the way, plays Wednesday Addams on the Netflix show Wednesday. Absolutely love that show. Anyhow, I digress. In addition to Rowland's reference to horror cinema, other details made their way into Scream, including his compulsion to pose his victims and the possibility that there could have been 2 culprits. That is so creepy. So creepy. And of course, those of you who have watched Scream know why I'm saying that is so creepy. They have a picture of Matthew Lillard and Skeet Ulrich below, like on this. Once you go to the website, you'll see what I'm talking about. But according to the 2022 documentary Lights, Camera, Murder, Scream, the Ripper's ability to take on 2 victims at once suggested that he may not have acted alone. It isn't clear that Kevin Williamson had this exact thought when he created Killer Pals, Billy Loomis, and Stu Macher. But a secondary suspect did create a very Scream-like red herring. The press went after Edward Lewis Humphrey, a mentally ill and occasionally violent student, but he was cleared in light of the evidence against Rowling. And after seeking psychiatric assistance, he eventually graduated magna cum laude. Okay, so I'm going to include a side note here. A lot of the time, your killers are very, very, very intelligent. So, like, just throwing that out there. It doesn't surprise me that he graduated magna cum laude. I mean, just saying. Anyway, there's another side note. In prison, Danny Rowling became engaged to Sandra London, who had previously been involved with convicted murderer and suspected serial killer John Gerard Schaefer. Oscar-winning documentarist, I can't pronounce that. You get what I'm saying. Errol Morris featured London in the second episode of his television series First Person, which the filmmaker has made available on YouTube. I will try to find that for you all and put the link below, because you might be interested in watching that. To be absolutely crystal clear here, there's no marital evidence that Danny Rowling ever had a partner in crime. Material evidence. Marital. There's no marital evidence either. Material evidence that he had ever had a partner in crime. Just as there's no truth to the notion that horror movies cause homicidal tendencies in otherwise healthy individuals. In the immortal words of Billy Loomis, movies don't create psychos. Movies make psychos more creative. The role the Gainesville Ripper played in Scream's origin story only goes to show that life may not always imitate art, but even the wildest art may imitate life. That is so interesting that, like, Kevin Williamson came up with the idea of Scream that way. Let's see if there's more to this. Like, there are other articles on here. All right, so we're going to go to the Smithsonian Magazine. They're a pretty reliable source. So smithsonianmag.com /videos, the inspiration behind Scream's Ghostface. If my internet ever loads, it has been very slow lately. We don't have snow here in Georgia, but we do have cold weather. It is really, really, really cold here. It got down below, I think, 20 degrees last night. But I'm from Southern Illinois, and right now back home in Southern Illinois, they have experienced 12 inches of snow and below freezing. So yeah. Anyhow, so the inspiration behind Scream's Ghostface, and this is the Smithsonian Magazine. If I can even talk today, I'm telling you. Maybe my mouth is frozen. Maybe that's why I'm not able to pronounce things. We're going to go with that. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So Scream's iconic villain, Ghostface, was inspired by the real-life serial killer who preyed on young students in the college town of Gainesville, Florida, which I had mentioned earlier. But that's all they said here. So I will put a link to that article down below, but they're not really showing anything else. So let's go into something else. I should have checked that out first. Okay, so this is horrorfacts.com, the real life killer that inspired Ghostface. And this was published May 17th, 2021, and it just says Joey is the author. So the real life killer that inspired Ghostface. So one night in 1994, like I said earlier, aspiring writer Kevin Williamson was house sitting for a friend when he happened across a news broadcast about American serial killer Danny Rolling, or the Gainesville Ripper as he had been dubbed by the media. So over the course of 4 days in August of 1990, Rolling had murdered 5 students in the town of Gainesville, Florida. As he watched the broadcast on TV, Williamson had glanced over and noticed that one of the windows in the room was open, like I said earlier. The realization caused Williamson to think about how easy it would be for someone to simply open the window and slipped in undetected. Yeah. There's been times that I have seen broadcasts on TV and scared myself silly. I am going to be talking about Gacy, the killer clown, as they say. I was going to talk about that today because I was going to talk about the real life inspiration behind Pennywise, the clown from It. If you like these kinds of podcasts, if you like me talking about these kinds of stories, just let me know what stories you prefer. Do you prefer haunted history, or do you prefer like stories like this where movies are inspired by real life events? Because I like researching all of this, and it is interesting, and I find out things new as I'm reading it with you all, to you all, however you want to say it. So it is interesting to me. I like haunted history. I like all of that. And I like doing research. I really, really like doing research. So, following this, Williamson drafted up an 18-page story about a young woman alone in her home being harassed on the phone by a killer before he ultimately kills her. Now, Drew Barrymore is the young woman that's in the Scream film. The opening scene, Drew Barrymore's character is the young woman. And behind the scenes, I can never forget it. Drew Barrymore was like, she was kind of dancing and like jumping up and down excitedly to see her, dummy. Her dummy obviously had been killed by Ghostface, and so she's like, "Oh my gosh!" If you get a chance to see the behind the scenes footage and like the extra footage from like Scream and the actors and actresses, check out Drew Barrymore's extra footage because it's great. It's kind of funny. Oh, anyhow, this little idea is what led Williamson to research the case of Danny Rolling further and eventually get to work on writing the screenplay for Scream, with Rolling serving as the inspiration for the iconic character of Ghostface. So, So what I'm about to tell you, the author does have a warning on it. The following information is graphic in content and is not intended for all readers. The information below may disturb some individuals. So if you're really, really sensitive to that, I suggest you flip the channel now. All right. It details the real-life murders of 5 Florida students at the hands of Danny Rolling. So do not listen further if you're sensitive to this. All right. So the first 2 victims, and they have a picture of them, was on August 24th, 1990. Rolling broke into the home of University of Florida freshman 18-year-old Sonja Larson and 17-year-old Christina Powell. It's so sad. Rolling followed the girls home from a Walmart and waited outside their apartment until about 3 in the morning. He used a screwdriver he had stolen from Walmart to pry open their screen door. Upon entering the home, he found Powell asleep on the couch. He reportedly stood over her for a brief period of time while she slept before deciding to explore the rest of the house. He searched an upstairs bedroom where he discovered Larson asleep in her bed. Rolling restrained Larson and taped her mouth shut to stifle her screams. He then rolled her onto her stomach and proceeded to stab her in the back multiple times. The exact number of times is still unknown. After killing Larson, he moved back downstairs and approached the still sleeping Powell. Rolling taped Powell's mouth shut and bound her wrists together behind her back. He then proceeded to cut off Powell's clothes, and then he sexually assaulted her. Rolling then turned Powell's face down and stabbed her in the back 5 times. The bodies of Powell and Larson were discovered the next day. Larson's body was found with her legs spread apart and her arms above her head. Rolling had posed her in a sexually provocative position as a means of demeaning her further. That's so awful. Due to the extent of the damage he inflicted on Larson, dental records had to be used to confirm her identity. Powell was found near the front door of the apartment in the same position. He had put her there so anyone coming into the apartment would immediately see her. Powell's breasts had been removed and were missing from the crime scene. When police examined the bodies, they discovered that Rollins had washed the 2 girls with detergent. Roland had also made sure to bring the soiled tape with him when he left. His father's years on the police force unfortunately taught him how to clean up a crime scene and remove all traces of evidence. That is horrible. Absolutely horrible. Okay, so before I continue, this gets really, really graphic. I'm trying to tone down some of the statements in this, but it gets really, 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 really graphic. So viewer discretion, listener discretion is very strongly advised. If you are very sensitive to this, please, 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 please flip the channel. So the third victim was on August 25th, 1990. Just a day after he had killed Larson and Powell, Rowling broke into the apartment of the 18-year-old Krista Hoyt. He used the same screwdriver and the KA bar knife to pry open the sliding glass doors. So, according to Rowling, he had been able to see Hoyt from his campsite and had been watching her the day before. When he entered the residence, he discovered that she wasn't at home. So he waited in the apartment until Hoyt returned at home around 11 a.m. After she entered, Rowling surprised her from behind by placing her in a chokehold. After Hoyt was subdued, he taped her mouth shut and bound her wrists behind her, and then forced Hoyt into the bedroom where he cut her clothes off and, did the same thing to his other victims. Just like with Powell, Rowling rolled Hoyt face down and stabbed her in the back, with one of his stabs rupturing her heart. Rowling originally left the apartment, but stated in his testimony that he later returned, claiming that he thought he might have left his wallet behind. So when he returned, he continued to mutilate Hoyt's body. That's awful. So I'm going to leave some of this stuff out because it is very, very graphic. And I've already mentioned some graphic things, so you can imagine what takes place in the things that I'm leaving out. So after he had finished mutilating Hoyt's body, he propped her up in a seated position at the end of the bed. He then dragged her bookshelf from another room into the bedroom, and because he had decapitated her, he placed Hoyt's head on one of the shelves. He positioned the bookshelf to make it appear as if the decapitated head was actually looking at her body. So after she failed to show up for her shift at the sheriff's department, ding, 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 sheriff's department, where she had worked as a dispatcher, officers were sent to her residence to investigate. So just like with the previous victims, Rowling washed the body clean and removed the soiled tape from the crime scene. The fact that each victim was a petite female with shoulder-length brown hair and that all three victims had been killed in the same fashion alerted police that they had a serial killer on their hands. So following the discovery of the third victim, the town was in a frenzy. News of the murders had attracted widespread media attention, and the media began reporting that there was a murderer on the loose in Gainesville. So because it was at the beginning of the fall semester, a large number of students transferred to other schools. Can't say as I blame them. While others just withdrew from school completely. That's sad. Students that chose to remain at school started traveling and even sleeping in groups. Campus common areas were opened up as a temporary housing to allow students that lived off campus and were afraid to go home a safe place to stay. So, the killer is almost caught. While the citizens of Gainesville were on high alert, Rowling, along with an accomplice, entered a First Union National Bank in Gainesville on August 27th and managed to make off with $7,000 in cash. His heist would be short-lived. Police soon spotted Rowling as he entered the woods. He was pursued on foot but managed to escape. While searching the woods, police found Rowland's campsite despite its close proximity to the murders. Gainesville police believed the campsite belonged to the bank robber and seized all the evidence they found. No one thought the bank robber and college killer were one and the same. Because of this mistake, the evidence seized that day would be locked away and not looked at for another 3 months. Oh, wow, that's frustrating. Later that same day, Rowland would go on to claim another 2 victims. So I'm not going to tell you about these victims. I'm going to let you read for yourself because it's so graphic, and I don't, you can read for yourself if you choose to do so. So, of course, they were on the hunt for a serial killer, and it goes to tell you about that. So what part of the real life translates to the film? The real life murder spree's biggest influence on the film would come in the opening scene of the movie, Drew Barrymore, when an assailant armed with a K-bar knife breaks into the home of Casey Becker, and even in one evening while she is home alone, kills her and then leaves her body hanging from a tree for her parents to discover. This is similar to how the Gainesville Ripper would pose the bodies of his victims after killing them. The difference is, of course, that Rowland would pose his victims in a provocative way, as opposed to hanging them from a tree. Later, it's also revealed that Casey was found to have been gutted from her groin to her sternum, the same wound that Krista Hoyt was discovered to have sustained. It comes as no shock that this opening scene would lift more from the murders than anything else. As we know, Williamson wrote this opening sequence immediately after coming across the story of Danny Rowland. After finishing this original draft, he would put it in a drawer to begin working on the script that would eventually become Teaching Miss Tingle, which would ironically be released years after Scream. Some time would pass before he would pull the draft out of the drawer and finish up the script for the originally titled film, Scary Movie. Williamson noticeably went back to the story of Gainesville Ripper. Just like in real life, the movie focuses on a small American town that is thrown into chaos after an unknown killer starts targeting students in the town. Just like in the movie, the town of Gainesville went on high alert, instituting, I really need to wear my glasses. I'm aging myself. Instituting curfews to try to ensure the safety of its youth. The story became a media sensation, receiving widespread media attention, similar to the barrage of news trucks that flooded the fictional town of Woodsboro. The movie would, of course, differ from the original story when it came to the killer. Instead of attention-seeking Danny Rowland, the killer would be revealed to be Billy Loomis and Stu Macher, with Billy being motivated by revenge rather than being sexually motivated like Rowland. Despite changing the killer to 2 high school friends, the 90s horror movie, which helped rejuvenate the slasher genre, took many elements from the tragic events that occurred in Gainesville, Florida, in August of 1990, once again proving that the truth is scarier than fiction. So, that was written by Joey. And let's see. There's a statement from the author. I have come here to chew bubblegum and write horror, and I'm all out of bubblegum. So there you go. Yeah, this is an interesting website. Anyhow, I don't know why I like the Scream films so much. I've never really been into slasher films, to be brutally honest. I did grow up watching Nightmare on Elm Street, Chucky, Michael Myers, in Halloween. Films like that. Freddy Krueger was one of my favorite scary film characters. And then I was in college. I think I was in college. No, I take that back. Was I? I might have been in college when Scream came out. I'm not exactly sure. I was probably getting ready to go to college when Scream came out. But anyhow, I originally watched Scream because y'all are going to think I'm a huge dork when I tell you this, but I was a huge fan of Creed, of the band Creed, and they had a music video at the end of the Scream movie. And it was a really great music video, by the way. I love that music video. I like Mark Tremonti. Excellent guitarist. That's why I liked Creed so much, is because I liked Mark Tremonti. He's a really good guitarist. Hopefully I'm pronouncing his name right. I will feel so bad if I am mispronouncing his name. But anyhow, I digress. I really hope that you all enjoyed this episode of Belongs to the Shadows. I'm not sure what I'm going to be talking about next time. I might be talking about Gacy. I don't know. You never know with me. Sometimes I come across things on Facebook and I'm like, ooh, that would make a really interesting episode of Belongs to the Shadows. I'm still wanting to go to the Bigfoot Museum that is located near me in Georgia. I would really, really, really like to film on location and be able to do an interview with the people who run that museum or own the museum. That would be incredible. For anybody who knows me, I love Bigfoot. I love Bigfoot. It's one of the cryptids that I absolutely love. I love anything Bigfoot. So there you go. If you don't know what to get me for my birthday, Bigfoot. I like Bigfoot stuff. Anyhow, I hope you all have a great night, day, whatever it is where you're at. And if it is snowing or you have really horrible cold weather in your area, please stay safe and warm. And take care of your critters. Make sure that they're warm as well and that they have fresh water. Anyhow, until next time, stay creepy.